This is Kali Yuga. So this is the age of darkness. And then when a spiritual person comes and is loyal only to God and only to the message, there will be a big gap between the spiritual saint or disciple or master and the social order. Now, if you are a little bit saintly, but not so much keen on getting persecuted, you will bend a little bit so that you don't get persecuted. But for people who are completely given themselves to God, they will just follow that vector, and that's it. God is their only refuge, and there will be a gap because society is, for the past few thousand years, materialistic, governed by all sorts of power games and politics and so forth, and impure. And then in that gap, there will come a clash. And if there were enough mass of saints, then society in large would turn into elevated spiritual society. But because it's not, then they get persecuted. And still, nevertheless, I mean, the Christianity in the first 350 years was losing every battle. Every time they would get killed and persecuted, but they won the war by being persecuted. They were just willing, they were not willing to kill the first Christians. There's no evidence, at least that I've seen in let's say pre-Constantine time, that Christians would kill anyone for their faith, but they were willing to die for it willingly. And that was enough. That made Christianity Christianity. If it wasn't for these saints being persecuted, because that was the only way to stand firm. Being a Christian was at times illegal. Well, there it is. I'm Christian. It's you will get hanged for that. Okay, hang me or crucify me. Fine. That's it. And that was as a testimony, that was enough, and that kept Christianity going. And that's why we have Christianity today, is because these people, they were willing to be persecuted. And then in later times, like St. John of the Cross or Padre Pio, St. John of the Cross was persecuted by Christians and imprisoned by Christians, and Teresa of Avila as well. And he was tortured because he gave a more Christian Christianity, and they were already political, institutional Christianity. And he was like, no, we need to live like the gospel, not like an institute. So they imprisoned him and tortured him. And Padre Pio as well, they locked him up because he was too Christian for the church. So the church persecuted him, because even the church got dark in time. That's at least my understanding.
Yeah, it feels a good description of the mechanism, what you are describing. And I just have something to add, which is I find, so first of all, nowadays, of course, persecution is also happening, right? So this is like a continuous thing. It's not only from the dark times. Of course, you know this from our school. This is pretty obvious. But there are lots of Christians in the world who cannot live their faith. And it's like they get killed if they admit that they are Christians. So there's still lots and lots of this kind of stuff going on. And I feel somehow, to your point, it's of this like showing the gap between the path that leads to God and then, whatever doesn't, and then whatever we are living out in the world that doesn't fit with that kind of creates that gap, as you were describing. And I feel it's also true for then observing how that vector continues, because it's the only vector that will triumph, right? So somehow I feel the saints, and for me personally, also, of course, watching Greek and reading the stories of the saints and so on, it's a testimony of the necessity to devote ourselves in that kind of way, which, of course, I mean, right, that's very difficult. I find that exceedingly difficult, even just in its small ways. But then to understand, okay, that's the way to live, right? That's the way to go all the way and to triumph in the end. And to understand that even though that leads kind of through hell, but it's the only way that you go to paradise. It was like I think this is an Islamic way of speaking, no? That the paradise is surrounded by hell and hell is surrounded by paradise. I think it's an Islamic saying. And I find that very fitting, like all the pleasures are on the way towards just indulging in the shelled, ego-driven, selfish viewpoint somehow. And it seems so nice, right? It's delicious on the way, but then the things that we have to go through to actually get to paradise. And Greek was saying this, especially in the last few years. I heard this a lot from reports from people, and also even in lectures, that he would insist. He would say, heaven, and to get to heaven, to get to paradise, to really arrive in self-revelation, you need merits, you need to fight, you need to make effort. It somehow needs that. And I guess this is a way to do that in this day and age. It kind of fits with this contrasting point, right, that a saint somehow offers to the society, and in the same time, yeah, it somehow outlines this pathway towards paradise.
If you like this video and want to learn more about Tantra, about yoga, about psychology, emotional healing, lives of saints, and the scriptures,
then hit the bell, like, subscribe, and you'll never miss an upload. Thank you so much.